The arch originates back to around 3600 BC, although it was not technically an arch. The megalithic temple complex on the Mediterranean island of Gozo in Malta is the world's second oldest man-made religious structure, which is roughly 5,500 years old. This structure was made by placing two large flat stones parallel to each other, then placing a stone of similar width on top to create an opening. Using this technique creates a problem, as the weight from the structure above rests entirely on the center of the top plank. Therefore, a larger force is applied downward and can lead to cracking, breaking, and even complete collapse of the structure. This was a particularly good idea for smaller and tighter spaces, but if they wanted to make bigger constructions, they were going to have to come up with something better. In 2100 BC, humans made a small advancement by creating a structure known as the arch. This temple in ancient Iraq was created and completed by using mud bricks. Culturally, this temple is dedicated to the moon as the oval entrance resembles the same shape and structure. This archway was created by wedge-shaped bricks called vissures, which are made perfectly to slide and lock into each other. The top center brick is called the keystone. Once this is in place, the structure is virtually indestructible, although over time it is a possibility that the vissures may crumble under the pressure due to the materials used at the time. To keep this from happening, more support from walls, other arches, and beams can strengthen and extend the life of these structures. Tel Dar Mudbrick Gatehouse in the 18th century BC in Israel is another example of this technique used. This impressive 4,000-year-old mudbrick gate was one of the first ever arches to be made and still stand. Because of its structural stability and impeccably intelligent design, it has been perfectly preserved and is a major historical landmark which is visited by millions all year round. Other techniques were soon adapted and used around the world. The massive mud brick ziggurat structure, which was extremely visually appealing, used a method which was called the pitch brick vault technique. This structure was supported by a single bearing wall at the back. The bricks are then laid vertically, which are pitched at an angle along the course of the wall to create a similar curve and then covered in plaster. This method rids the need for the use of centering. The structure is then covered in plaster, which makes it stable and unsusceptible to collapsing during an earthquake, which was particularly common in this area. The pitch brick vault technique was first used by the Greeks and then passed on to the Romans, eventually used by the Egyptians to create tombs and graves in the Nile Delta. The arch, as seen in many historical landmarks, was largely used for religious monuments and structures around the world. The significance of these buildings was created with the sole purpose to preserve cultural meaning and provide an understanding of history and art. These architectural structures were also used for various kinds of worship and sacrifice, while also revealing the religious beliefs of various societies of their time. In the Middle East, the Islamic created an arch known as the horseshoe-shaped arch, which is an arch on top of an arch and can be seen in many mosques across the globe. Arches in religious places can symbolize many things such as strength, support, and openness. The Christian religion believes that the arch is God separating light from dark. Over time, the arch has developed to become more visually appealing and architecturally clever due to the advance in technology and available materials. The first buildings and constructions mostly used materials such as mud, stone, and mud bricks, which were only used for small, storeroom-like structures. With the evolution of technology and resources, builders were able to create larger places for people to gather. The Romans created some of the most monumental, architecturally impressive landmarks in the world with their adaptation to arches. They really took advantage of the design element and incorporated it into many of their well-known structures, still standing today. This includes the Colosseum, the Arch of Constantine, and the Basilica, just to name a few. They discovered that the semicircle-like arch structure was not actually needed, so they proceeded to create segmental arches which could range from 6 to 7 stories high. They primarily used stone, timber, and marble, but later discovered concrete, as it was exceptionally durable and strong. As seen in the Basilica, the long arch ceilings are an example of barrel vaulting. This technique, like the pitched brick technique, involves a curved structure that points at the apex. It is a series of arches or vaults side by side to resemble a continuous configuration. Romans were very fond of this method as they could place multiple barrel vaults together to create larger open spaces with room on sides for wide open windows. Arches and domes were used all over the world from the ancient times and found their way right through to modern day. During the 15th to 19th century, the techniques of the construction of the arch were being used for large churches, houses, palaces, and even statues and monuments. Rather than using the arch for its structural quality, the arch adapted into a more aesthetic element. They are used to bring character into buildings and give it a more classical feel. Modern-day architecture is heavily influenced by the techniques used by the Romans. Paris in particular adapted to similar inspirations and incorporated arches in many of their important buildings, including the Le Grand Louvre, Eiffel Tower, and the Musée d'Orsay. Today, architectures are still using the basics of the Roman architecture but are always challenging the possible. Now that steel is a commonly available material, as it is lightweight and durable while adding a sleek, modern finish. The use of the arch structure allows large buildings, bridges, and statues to be developed. The Phoenix International Media Center in Beijing is a classic example of modern architecture. Its twisting steel form is absolutely eye-catching and is made up of 3,800 glass panels. The curved structure has taken its own modern twist, pun intended, and pulled inspiration from the original arches used in the Roman times. St. Louis Gateway Arch in Missouri, United States, is a 630-foot stainless steel structure and the world's tallest arch. Once again, drawing inspiration from the original arches and architecture, this modern piece was ahead of its time and was commonly known as the Gateway to the West because of its curvatured door-like similarity. Homes and apartments today are becoming more modern with flatter roofs and squared edges made of steel, brick, wood, concrete, or whatever material desired. Churches, mosques, and places of worship are still genuinely constructed with arched roofs, windows, and doors. These religious buildings will continue to keep their classic structured elements as they represent history and culture. Without the basis of this element, we would not have the wide open interior spaces that make up our cities. Arches will continue to be used as a design element as they are a timeless feature used in all types of buildings. The simplicity of the arch used in modern-day architecture will always draw back to the original, simple structure which was created thousands of years ago.